I'm Mitch Kalmus. I'm a member of the Southern Connecticut Darwin Day Committee, and we're going to do the science quiz. A couple of ground rules before we get started. So we're going to take the quiz, get a piece of paper, scrap paper, individually write your answers on the scrap paper. I'm going to go back later and go over everything. 1 minute per question, roughly. I'll give you a 5-second warning before we go on to the next question. The honor system, meaning, don't ask Siri or Alexa or Google or whatever. Don't use your smartphones. Just do the best you can. So here we go. Question 1. On April 19th, 2021, scientists achieved the first powered controlled flight on another planet with this drone called Ingenuity. To keep Ingenuity aloft on Mars, its blades must rotate at a speed of at least 2,400 revolutions per minute, about 10 times faster than what is needed on Earth. Why must Ingenuity's blades rotate at such a faster rate? So here's your choices. Why must it rotate at a faster rate? Martian regulations, choice A. Choice B, to compensate for size and weight restrictions, fitting inside the rover, conserving fuel for the flight to Mars. The blades were made half the size to similar drones on Earth. C, to compensate for the reduced amount of power generated by Ingenuity's solar cells, because Mars receives about half the solar energy as Earth. D, to maintain stability in flight. The gravity of Mars is about a third of Earth, so it makes it harder to control the direction of movement. Or E, to compensate for the lower density of Mars's atmosphere. The density of the atmosphere in Mars is 1% that of Earth, making it harder to generate lift. So I'll give you a little bit of time. I'm going to give you 5 more seconds. Okay, next question. Found in all known forms of life, I'm often referred to as the molecular unit of currency of intracellular energy transfer. I store the energy released from the breakdown of sugar in a usable form and provide this energy to directly drive cellular processes such as chemical synthesis, muscle contraction, and nerve impulse propagation. Who am I? So I have to apologize. I kind of went all overboard here. I'm going to give you 15 choices because we're breaking rules left and right. So why not, right? Okay, so who am I? Store energy in a usable form. A, glucose. B, an enzyme. C, mitochondria. D, DNA. E, RNA. F, ADP. G, APP. H, ATP. I, RRA. J, IRS. K, PMS. L, PNS. M, THC, N, LSD, or O, dilithium crystals. I'll give you a hint, it is not dilithium crystals. Okay, I'm going to give you another 10 seconds. Okay, next question. Ionization energy is the amount of energy needed to remove an outer electron from an atom, thus making the atom an ion, which is an atom with an electrical charge. In order to show the trend of increasing ionization energy in the periodic table, you must draw 2 arrows. We're going to call those arrows 1 and 2. So arrow 1 is going to show increasing ionization energy in the rows or periods, and arrow 2 is going to show increasing ionization energy in the groups or columns. In which direction should each arrow point? So before I show you the choices, I'm going to let you think about that for a second. Again, this is the energy needed to pull an electron off of an atom. How much energy do you need to do that? That's ionization energy. Okay, so here we go. Here's your choices. Choice A, arrow 1 is from left to right. Arrow 2 is from top to bottom. Choice B, arrow 1 is from right to left. Arrow 2 is from bottom to top. Choice C, arrow 1 is from left to right, arrow 2 is from bottom to top. Choice D, arrow 1 is from right to left, arrow 2 is from top to bottom. And choice E, my head is spinning. Next question, please. All right, 5 more seconds. Okay, that was 7, but that's okay. Here we go. Number 4, which instrument have scientists called the most productive in terms of generating gains in our understanding of the universe? Is it A, the smartphone, B, the space shuttle, C, the Large Hadron Collider, D, the Hubble Space Telescope, E, the International Space Station, or F, the slide rule? Okay, 5 seconds. Okay. Next question. Why is Earth's magnetic field so important to life on Earth? Here's your choices. Choice A, it attracted ancient aliens which seeded the Earth with life. Choice B, deflects the solar wind and cosmic rays from destroying parts of the Earth's atmosphere. C, provided a stable magnetic environment that allowed sufficient time for life to evolve. D, provided the appropriate energy field for animal magnetism to be effective. E, protects the Earth from the gamma ray bursts produced by supernovae. Okay. 5 more seconds. All right, next question. Dead zones are areas in oceans and lakes in which there is not enough oxygen to support most aquatic organisms. The size and number of dead zones around the world has dramatically increased in the last 50 years. Which organism or organisms and which process is most directly responsible for the depletion of oxygen in coastal dead zones, such as the one in the Gulf of Mexico? A, cows and defecation. B, bacteria and decomposition. C, algae and photosynthesis. D, corn and fertilization of topsoil. E, politicians and gaslighting. Okay, 5 second. The phrase survival of the fittest is often associated with Darwin, but he didn't actually coin it. Herbert Spencer originated the expression after reading Darwin's On the Origin of Species. Evolutionary biologists use the term fitness when comparing the individual members of species. What determines the extent of evolutionary fitness of an individual? Here's your choices. Okay, is it the degree to which an individual A can survive in its environment, or in other words, its lifespan? B, is physically stronger or weaker than other members of its species? C, is physically stronger or weaker than other species in its environment? D is able to adapt to a changing environment. And E is able to pass on its physical and genetic characteristics to the next generation. Okay. 5 seconds. Okay, that's it. Time's up.
Now we're going to find out the answers to the science quiz from Mitch.
Hi again. So the first one, if you remember, was about ingenuity and why the blades have to rotate at a faster rate. And the answer is to compensate for the lower density of the atmosphere in Mars. To understand this, we have to look at how we generate lift. And good luck looking up this on the internet, by the way, because you get very conflicting results as to how this happens. Just imagine, though, 120 years ago is when this all started with the Wright brothers. It's just outstanding, amazing. So it starts with the shape of the wing or the shape of the rotor, and it's all about how air interacts with the shape of the wing as it passes over it, and it interacts differently above and below the shape of the wing or the rotor, and that generates lift, having to do with Newton's third law of motion. Not, according to NASA, not how fast the air is going over the top and the bottom. You can see here the factors that affect the degree of lift. The second one is density, right? So it's all about having that air interact with that shape. If you don't have air, you better spin that rotor faster to interact with more air. If you have less air, I should say. Number two, the energy, how we store energy is, I'm sorry about all these choices, just having a little fun there. The answer is ATP. Darwin would have loved to know about ATP because it's just another piece of evidence that all life on Earth is related. It's ATP, whether you're an elephant or a fungus or bacteria, it's all done the same way. So this little molecule that has 3 phosphates, hence the name triphosphate, adenosine triphosphate, starts as ADP that has 2 phosphates. And then when you eat your food and you get your energy from the nutrients in the food, we could use that energy to attach another phosphate onto ADP, turning into ATP. And that energy from your nutrients is stored right here in this bond. And then when you need the energy, you break the bond, you release the phosphate, reverse that process, and you regenerate ADP. So in a way, it's like having a rechargeable battery for your cells. In fact, the human body recycles as much ATP and ADP as your own body weight every day. Imagine that. So some uses of ATP, you'll see a lot of ATP use tomorrow. And, if you wanted to do things like climb a ladder or let's say run up a flight of steps, or if you wanted to climb a wall instead of the steps, right? Or even if you wanted to sign a piece of paper saying that you're someone who maybe you're really not. That's using ATP because you're contracting your muscles. Question 3, ionization energy is the amount of energy needed to remove an outer electron from an atom. What's the answer with the arrows? Look at all this. I'm so sorry for putting you through this. The answer is C, from left to right or bottom to top for the columns. So why is that so? When we go across the periodic table in a row, the atoms are getting smaller because we're adding more protons and we're adding more electrons, which attract each other and actually shrink the size of the atom. So those outer electrons are actually close to the nucleus of the atom. So it takes a lot of energy to remove them. As you go down a column, it's a little different though, because the atoms are getting larger and you're adding more shells of electrons that are further and further away from the nucleus. So they're actually easier to pull off. So there's actually less ionization energy as you go down. So therefore, to represent increasing, the arrow has to point up. Number 4, which instrument have scientists called the most productive in terms of generating gains in our understanding? No, kids, it's not the smartphone. I'm sorry. Please put the phone down, please. It's the Hubble Space Telescope, named after Edwin Hubble, the great astronomer who discovered galaxies outside the Milky Way and that the universe is expanding and we're getting smaller as we speak. Just an amazing thing. I mean, this is just one of so many beautiful pictures that it's provided us of the universe. And I know a lot of you out there know this stuff already, but it's really worth it to take a couple of minutes and appreciate it together, you know? It didn't start out as a success. There was a problem with the mirror and the images were fuzzy, but they were able to correct it, not by bringing it back to Earth, but by servicing the telescope in space and by adding a lens to it, which in effect corrected its vision like glasses or contact lenses. So you could see the difference here before and after, what an effect it had on the microscope, just outstanding. So some of the accomplishments: 1.3 million observations in 30 years. And by the way, those 30 years paralleled my teaching career, starting in 1990, ending in 2020. But the Hubble is still going. It provided data for more than 19,000 scientific papers, clarified the age of the universe as much as we know right now, discovered 4 moons of Pluto, helped determine the rate at which the universe is expanding, and discovered that black holes are at the center of many, if not all, galaxies. Created a 3D map of dark matter, discovered protoplanetary disks. We could actually see the steps of planet formation. Took the first picture of an exoplanet and the first organic molecule detected on another planet. Unbelievable. When I was in high school, there were no exoplanets, and now there's thousands of them. And who knows what we're going to find out very soon. My favorite is the deep field image. This astronomer, Dr. Robert Williams, who was the director of the Space Telescope Science Institute, he wanted to detect faint light from distant galaxies. So he pointed the Hubble at a very small empty region of space. When we say empty, there were a few stars there in the Milky Way, but we wanted to use a very empty region so that light from closer stars would not interfere with the light coming from distant sources. So they pointed the telescope there, 342 separate exposures, adding up to about 100 hours and 10 consecutive days. This has been referred to as staring at nothing. This was a big risk considering what had happened with Hubble, billion-dollar, failure, and then they corrected it. And what if they'd stared at nothing and found nothing? And we're talking about an area, 1/24 millionth of the total area of the sky. If you were looking up at the sky, it would be 1/12 of the diameter of the full moon, or what you would see if you were looking at the sky through an 8-foot-long straw. So a really tiny area. So what did Hubble detect in this tiny, tiny, tiny area? Over 3,000 galaxies, later updated with more imaging to 10,000. And these are galaxies that are so far away, and they're looking into the history of the universe. We can now see how galaxies evolve. And one of the things that Hubble is doing now is targeting areas to look at with the James Webb Space Telescope. And the wonderful thing is that both of them will be in service at the same time and will be able to complement each other in what they can see. And this telescope will be operational, they're saying, in the summer. Question 5, why is Earth's magnetic field so important to life on Earth? The answer: it deflects the solar wind and cosmic rays from destroying parts of Earth's atmosphere, specifically the ozone layer. That would be the worst, right? Because all the radiation would get through. Some of this radiation gets snapped back, you can see along magnetic field lines, and that's what causes the aurora borealis part of it. Question 6, dead zones are areas in oceans and lakes, all right? No oxygen, what's causing that? I'm assuming that some of you probably said algae and photosynthesis, but it's not, because photosynthesis produces oxygen, right? The answer is bacteria and decomposition. It starts in the Midwest with all this farmland and all the agriculture and livestock, tons and tons of nitrogen and phosphorus get into the water, go to the lowest elevation, they either end up in a pond or a lake or a stream, and then they will feed into larger streams and rivers and into the mighty Mississippi down to the Gulf of Mexico. And then the algae feast on that nitrogen and phosphorus, and their population explodes. But the real hypoxia, lack of oxygen, is due to the decomposers when the algae die. Those are the ones that are using up all the oxygen, especially at the bottom of the bodies of water. Big problem. Question 7. So this term fitness, survival of the fittest, and the term fitness, what determines the extent of evolutionary fitness of an individual? And this was always a problem, survival of the fittest, because students think, oh, it's how strong you are, the strongest survive, but it doesn't have to do with how strong you are. Bacteria is not strong, and a bacteria that's resistant to antibiotics, or an insect that's camouflaged is not strong. So it's not, your fitness is not how strong you are physically. It's your ability to pass on your physical and genetic characteristics to the next generation. So it's all about getting your characteristics passed on. And that, my friends, is the end of the quiz. I hope you enjoyed it. How many of you got 5 or more correct? Okay, so I hope to see you next year.